We needed a year to get permission to start filming in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia has to emphasize its transition because it is an existential matter, and it's not postponable. It's now or never.
Our ambitions has no limits. We all believe the same.
If you go to the street of Riyadh and ask the people on the street with a cameraman about MBS, they all going to tell you that they like MBS. If I were there, I would say I like MBS.
Saudi Arabia is slowly turning into a police state. Anything can lead to an arrest.
If someone refused leaving from his house, so you can kill him. The order became from MBS itself.
Today, we understand each other much better than we understood each other years ago.
Saudi Arabia is changing with an interesting purpose, but we don't clearly know what it is.
My name is Khalid Al-Jabri. I am an exiled Saudi living in Washington, D.C. I'm also the brother of Umar and Sarah Al-Jabri, who have been held as hostages inside Saudi Arabia since the very first day Mohammed bin Salman became Crown Prince.
We met people from the diaspora before we left for Saudi Arabia. Exiles who fled after Mohammed bin Salman, often called by his initials MBS, came to power. Seen as opponents to the regime, they ache for the home and family they left behind. And yet,
despite the kind of vindictive attack by MBS on my family, I actually want his economic reforms to succeed. He happens to be, right now, the person in charge of my country.
our journey into a transitioning kingdom began in Riyadh in summer 2024. We were greeted at the airport by a driver and a representative from the Ministry of Media. They were eager to show us their Saudi Arabia. As temperatures climbed to 43 degrees Celsius, there weren't many people out on the streets of this car-centric capital. Our first stop was a mall that's open 24/7. Before Mohammed bin Salman's ascent to power began, there were separate floors for men and women. Wearing a hijab was mandatory and strictly enforced. But on our visit, the country was presented as more open and tolerant.
This modernization is important to us. And this modernization will be one that is very clearly Saudi, and not an impersonation of one like in the United States, France, or Europe, for instance. It's something that will be very specific to Saudi Arabia, because 70% of our population are young people, under the age of 30.
As night fell and the temperature lowered, the country's youth emerged in the streets of Riyadh.
The country has the highest smartphone usage rate, highest social media saturation in the world, or among the highest in the world. They were sitting there on their phones all day, and they could see in comparably wealthy countries elsewhere in the world, people had jobs, they went on dates, and they went to concerts, and they could do things together.
All of them were frustrated by the old system when we had like ailing kings, assumed the throne when they were 80, just like King Salman right now. You know, he's old. We thought we can do better. We thought that Saudi was a sleeping giant.
I was working at the Wall Street Journal. Saudi Arabia was a place that I had never really written about because it always did things the same way for almost a century. Pumped oil, and they sold oil, and they kept the money, and they spent the money. And like, that was it. All of a sudden, like, this new guy, this new prince, like, shows up. Nobody's heard of him. And he's saying they're going to do everything differently.
Something of a revolution happening here. His Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
If you allow me to speak in Arabic, because a lot of Saudi audience here and I really respect them. هذا سلاح ذو حدين. إذا عملوا وتوجهوا بالشكل الصحيح والطريق الصحيح وبكل قوة سوف يخلقون بلد آخر مختلف تماما، سوف يضعون بصمتهم في العالم. وإذا توجهوا التوجه الخاطئ سوف يكونون دمار لهذا البلد.
MBS was a prince who did not have an automatic path to becoming king or to becoming the crown prince. He was one of the younger sons of a Prince Salman who did not seem like he would ever become king. The rule with the family was that the crown would go to the next oldest brother, but there were two brothers older than Salman, but they were old. And so one of them died in 2011, one of them died not that long after. And so that meant that all of a sudden, Salman, who was, you know, the third one down, was the crown prince. So one of the things that distinguishes Mohammed bin Salman is that he was educated in Saudi Arabia. He didn't go abroad for his education.
He wasn't the popular kid. He was just an outcast, an outlier. In schools, a lot of people do political calculus. So like a lot of people wanted to make themselves closer to the junior royals. You're a less kind of a royal if your mom is not from the royal family. And that's the case for MBS. Growing up, he had a lot of grudge against some of the elites and other royals because he probably grew up with some kind of an inferiority complex.
And he spent a lot of time literally next to his father and had a very good understanding of how the royal court worked and the different power centers in the royal court.
Mohammed bin Salman began positioning for power as soon as his father, Salman bin Abdulaziz, was crowned in 2015.
Part of the concern was that when Salman became king, these other family members didn't want Mohammed to be the crown prince. And Salman made a very, very smart series of decisions then. So Salman said, well, we will pass a crown down to the next generation, but it's not going to go to my son, it's going to go to my nephew. Mohammed bin Naif was someone who had deep ties to American intelligence, to the US government, and to the kind of global anti-terrorism, post 9/11 security community. When Salman put this guy in as crown prince, who they knew, they trusted, who had deep personal relationships with intelligence officials, it was a sign that, oh, well, the crown's going to go to the next generation, but it's someone who we all know and who we all like. And Mohammed bin Salman just sort of waited.
In another strategic move, King Salman named Mohammed bin Salman deputy crown prince and appointed him as defense minister. Mohammed bin Salman then launched a series of military interventions against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels to secure Saudi Arabia's position in the region. The operation turned into a humanitarian catastrophe, but the world found out who Mohammed bin Salman was.
And Mohammed bin Naif was older than Mohammed bin Salman, so he seemed physically tired and didn't have the same level of energy or decisiveness or willingness to fight that Mohammed bin Salman had.
In his rivalry with Mohammed bin Naif, the young deputy crown prince wasn't afraid to make bold moves or go against the established order. In the spring of 2016, With the blessing of his father, King Salman, Mohammed bin Salman announced a series of sweeping reforms. Vision 2030, a plan largely aimed at reducing the country's dependence on oil.
It included the role of women, education, every domain, the economy, the environment, and the climate.
This transition from oil economy to a post-oil economy is the absolute imperative for Saudi Arabia, and that everything else comes second, and that this is an existential project which is not postponable. They have postponed too long. They are late to the game, and they know it. Saudi Arabia has done nothing to prepare for the future, and the future is now.
A year after Vision 2030 was launched, King Salman deposed his nephew and appointed MBS as Crown Prince, putting his son next in line for the throne.
At that point, my life was turned upside down. And that's where it got complicated for my family. It actually got complicated from the very, very, very first hours, not even days. Omar and Sarah, my brother and sister, they were 17 and 18 years old. They were about to leave Saudi to come to the US to complete their education, and they were stopped at the airport. That was effectively MBS's first order of business as a crown prince, putting travel restrictions on a couple of minors.
Khalid al-Jabri's father, who was close with Mohammed bin Nayef, managed to find refuge in Canada.
Dad worked in the security apparatus at that point for decades. And in virtue of his work, he had access to a lot of the secret classified stuff, including all the nasty things that MBS did. And for MBS, he perceives my father as a threat. He is very risk averse. It doesn't matter if you are a true threat or not to MBS. If he perceives you as a threat, then you're in trouble.
And Mohammed bin Salman saw a lot of people as threats.
MBS and his father and the other inner circle are not stupid people. They know that in the 20th century, the monarchs that tried radical reform, modernization, and all of the liberalization, economic transformation from the top down, usually ended up getting overthrown by the changes they unleashed. They could not control the forces they set at work. The bigger problem is people who've been receiving benefits, amenities from the government, that will start to see those taken away. And they'll be expected to fend for themselves. And that's a dangerous moment. So the repression is designed first to silence the people who benefited from the Ancien Regime. That's why all those people were put in the Ritz-Carlton, the world's nicest, the most luxurious prison of all time.
In 2017, around 300 people, including members of the royal family, high-ranking officials, billionaires, and religious dignitaries, were invited to the luxury hotel under a pretext.
The Riyadh Ritz-Carlton was a building that was built as a palace for the royal family, and then it was sort of a surplus palace, lavish palace of a hotel. So he invited these guys to the Ritz-Carlton and locked them up. For months, MBS had a team of people, accountants and lawyers, looking at the finances of all these prominent Saudis and figuring out, did they get money illegally? Did they steal money from the state? What did they do? And coming up with a dossier on each one. And they built up this whole body of evidence against each of these people with nobody knowing what was going on.
That to get out, you have to pay, you have to sign over this company, you have to do this, you have to do that, and all in the name of anti-corruption.
Mohammed bin Salman is estimated to have gathered nearly $107 billion during that period of forced lockdown in this 5-star jail.
Truth be told, when speaking with Saudis at the time, few of them felt sorry for the people who were confined at the Ritz. Because a lot of those same people had been, to use a French expression, stuffing themselves for a long time. People didn't criticize him for this.
Every September, Saudis celebrate the kingdom's unification. The Crown Prince's portrait is displayed everywhere in the streets. Mohammed bin Salman is the new face of Saudi nationalism. Among the Crown Prince's fans is 38-year-old Arij. She's a content creator in a country where regime critics can face jail time for what they post on social media.
Since we got born here, every day we become more proud than ever. Because, you know, the government facilitates everything for us. Everything you can imagine. Year by year, it's got improved and get better. And how people celebrating because they want to reach their voices. They want to the government as thankful people. Alhamdulillah.
The fireworks are the evening's highlight. Attendees scramble to get the best view.
This idea of MBS being popular in Saudi Arabia, well, it's funny. It's funny premise. I know people who were arrested because they were trying to ask people in the street about their opinion, not about MBS, but even a more trivial thing, like about some programs or some projects. If you go to the street of Riyadh and ask the people on the street with a cameraman about MBS, they all going to tell you that they like MBS. If I were there, I would say I like MBS. Because they all fear arrest, torture. They have seen how people who do not like MBS were treated.
I want a cheesecake. Hey.
Arij is quick to promote the changes brought about by Mohammed bin Salman.
See, he's a Saudi guy. He's working in ice cream. Usually we don't have Saudi guy. We always have Indians or other nations. It's normal to see Saudis selling popcorn, ice cream, corns. Before, no, we don't have that thinking yet.
Saudis have lived off the monarchy and state subsidies for most of their lives. But Mohammed bin Salman had a new pitch for young people. Wean yourselves from the oil dividends and get to work, in exchange for a life less dictated by religious values. As the monarch of Saudi Arabia, King Salman also holds the title custodian of the two holy mosques, meaning he bears responsibility for two of Islam's holiest sites.
Historically, the mandate that the Saudi king had, the mandate that the royal family had to rule, was their support from the religious establishment. These very conservative religious clerics who had a lot of influence in Saudi Arabia over people's everyday lives said, you know, the Al Saud family are our allies, we can trust them, they're our rulers. It had been like that since the kingdom was founded.
To disempower the clerical authorities, the way you do it is with power from the top down. That's the way you do it. This was done before MBS was in the picture. It was done by his father, who disempowered the religious police.
Religious police still stalk the streets with their canes to make sure that everyone goes to the mosques to pray.
When I lived in Saudi Arabia, there was the religious police, and of course we were scared of them. There were SUVs filled with men who had the power to arrest people dressed in a certain way, who could scold us when we didn't cover ourselves, for example. The regime had granted them those rights. It really was a government byproduct.
He didn't fire them or disband them. He didn't kick them out of their jobs, but he made it so they had no authority. The most they can do is scold people, as you shouldn't. And they said, well, get out of here, okay.
It'd be better if you covered yourself, but they had no authority to actually arrest anyone.
How did he do it? He just did it. I'm the king and I did it. Now comes MBS. MBS is unique among modern Arab leaders. He is a student of Islamic law. He is a scholar, he has a master's degree in Islamic jurisprudence. So when the clerics come and they say, you shall not, because it says here, he can say, oh no, it here says, da, 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 and I'm doing, it's very Islamic, and you guys are full of it. This man has an argument based in their own language. And then he has the power. All of this combines to allow him to do this transformation.
In this footage from Saudi television, Mohammed bin Salman is meeting with the Grand Mufti. As the highest-ranking religious authority, the Grand Mufti interprets Sharia law and issues opinions.
Mohammed bin Salman saw an opportunity to replace those very conservative religious leaders with a different set of values that would give him and his father legitimacy.
This quest for legitimacy goes through the small town of Diriyah, outside of Riyadh. The Saudis' ancestors lived in the historical citadel of At-Turaif. Mohammed bin Salman and his father opened a museum that exhibits a reframed history. A seemingly small change that reshapes the country's identity.
Welcome to the Turaif Historic District. I'm Mohammed Adidi and I'll be your guide today.
This museum, visited by few foreign tourists, is mostly geared towards Saudis.
There are books here that are 200 to 300 years old, dating back to the first Saudi Arabia period between 1727 and 1818. 1727 is the date of the first Saudi Arabia foundation. This is where Imam Mohammed bin Saud established this Saudi state. When we look at these books, we progressively realize that the true foundation date was 1727.
The museum's narrative focuses on the year 1727. King Salman set that year as the Saudi state's official founding by royal decree in 2022.
L'Arabie a été fondée sur un pacte politique, conclu en 1744, 45 ans avant la Révolution française, entre un prince et un imam. C'est l'alliance du sabre et du Coran.
In the past, the Saudi history has always been defined in terms of the alliance between the Sauds and Wahhab and his followers, which really gave the clerics a kind of equal position with the royal family. Now, there's another day, the founding day, in 1727, where the Saudis had conquered a nearby town and thereby established the origin of the first Saudi state. Decades before, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and the puritanical Wahhabi movement came into the picture.
Wahhabism, a strict interpretation of Islam, was central to the founding story of the Saudi state. Its role was weakened with the stroke of a pen. Bolstered by this new national narrative, Mohammed bin Salman has been aiming to open the country more to visitors, turning tourism into the new economic fuel of Saudi Arabia. He's set his sights especially on the Al Ula region, backed by investments worth tens of billions of dollars.
Al Ula was until very recently a place religious people refused to let anyone visit, so it was completely set aside.
Al Ula encompasses the ancient Nabatean city of Hegra, a civilization that predates Islam. Conservative religious interpretations long believed the site to be cursed. Clerics issued religious rulings or fatwas, telling Muslims to avoid it. For decades, Saudis stayed away. A few luxury hotels have now popped up close to a huge futuristic building. Al Ula is hoping to welcome 1 million visitors a year. How? raves in the middle of the desert. The kingdom wants to show that it knows how to party and can compete with neighbours Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which have become the Gulf's Ibizas. Monarchy has created an entertainment authority that spends petrodollars to invite big names in the electronic music scene. The government wants to ensure its own Made in Saudi artists are known to the public.
For the vision of 2030, the government gave more room for the artists to explore more, and they not only connect the local artists and play local artists, but also connect them with the international ones, and then make a bridge, and then push them also to be a better version, making classes, giving courses, and helping small local artists to achieve their dreams, giving a lot of programs that help small creative to turn their idea into something that is a business to them.
Wealthy tourists are among the festival goers, the gilded youth of the Gulf who sleep in the luxury hotels nearby. But this kind of event doesn't seem to welcome all Saudis.
They want to give the impression that women are free.
They actually look free in this video.
They allow these girls in just for propaganda purposes. No one can imagine there's one law for tourists and one for Saudi women.
Fawz Al-Otaibi and her husband Ahmed are a Saudi couple living in exile in the UK. Footage from the festival reminds them of a painful memory.
This video was filmed at a festival in Riyadh in 2019. I was dancing. I was happy. 2 days later, I was summoned to the police station. And when I got there, they asked me why I danced. I said, "Why are you throwing a party if we can't dance?" They told me, "This party isn't for you. It's for visitors." The policeman told me that according to the law, he would give me a $750 fine, and he said, "If you do it again, you'll go to jail."
In Saudi Arabia, Fawz Al-Otaibi was known for her activism on women's rights. She denounced polygamy on Saudi television in 2019 and drew the ire of the monarchy, like her sister, Manahel, a fitness teacher and blogger, with young Saudi followers on social media.
Manahel was one of those who believed in MBS and his declarations. Paradoxically, she was arrested by MBS's men, those under his direction, not the morality police.
Manahel Al-Otaibi was accused of campaigning on social media to end male guardianship and wearing inappropriate clothing, charges reminiscent of religious police times. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison in January 2024.
The Saudi government with MBS produced changes to the religious police. They did not abolish it. And they have been changed to preaching about obedience to the ruler and how it is a sin to even dislike MBS.
I have spoken to Manahel a few times since she was arrested. She sounded exhausted. She told me to stop mentioning her on social media. She said, "I don't even know what's going on in the outside world, but I'm paying the price of what you do. Stop everything and forget me."
Despite his increasingly authoritarian politics, Mohammed bin Salman still hoped to rebrand Saudi Arabia's global image. Its list of major international events keeps growing. In 2030, it will host the World Expo, in 2029, the Asian Winter Games, and in 2034, the FIFA World Cup.
It's about soft power, it's about rebranding, it's about switching the conversation to something more pleasant than the brutal oppression of the regime.
More and more performers and stars are rushing to the kingdom.
When you have somebody like Ronaldo with like 600 million Instagram followers posting about Al-Ula, whatever, that's the best advertisement you can get.
Mohammed bin Salman knows how to speak the language of his generation. He's also a video game and sci-fi enthusiast. He announced his most ambitious project in 2021.
نقدم لكم ذا لاين. مدينة مليونية بطول 170 كيلو، 0 سيارات، 0 شوارع، و0 انبعاثات كربونية. مشروع ذا لاين هو ثورة حضارية للإنسان، تضع الإنسان أولاً.
What if we built the line?
This region in northwest Saudi Arabia is called Neom. It's home to The Line, the centerpiece of a series of major projects.
MBS saw that in the northwest of the country, there's like nobody there. Oh, well, there's not many people there. And he saw it as a blank slate where he could build a new city. You could have resorts, you could have offices and factories and housing, and you could get people from all over the world to come move there. They called it like a place of the future.
Mohammed bin Salman is willing to do whatever it takes to create his dream city.
I'm a former Saudi intelligence officer. I worked as a policeman, also was fighting criminals, terrorism. In the beginning of the January 2020, there is a mission. I was asked to go to Tabuk to dealing with Al-Hawaitat because some of them refused leaving their homes. Al-Hawaitat is a big tribe in Saudi Arabia. Most of them, they live in the north of Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, they lived in the middle of the Neom project, especially the line project. Why they choosing me, actually? Because I was trained to shoot. They asked me to use lethal force. So if someone refused leaving from his house, so you can kill him.
Al-Nezi managed to escape the mission by faking an injury, but his colleagues followed the orders: shoot to kill.
Locals who lived in the regions were violently evicted. One was killed in 2020, Abdul Rahim al-Huwaidi. More than 15 people were sentenced to 15 to 50 years of jail time for refusing to leave their home. 5 got the death penalty. This city will be built on Saudi blood.
Saudi Arabia carried out more than 300 executions in 2024, a record. Mohammed bin Salman could have easily been shunned by the international community, especially after October 2018, when Saudi agents killed journalist Jamal Khashoggi inside the consulate in Istanbul, a gruesome incident that sparked global outrage.
It really made it a lot harder for him to do what he wanted to do, which is make Saudi Arabia more international, more outward-looking, more connected with the international business world.
Nevertheless, just a few weeks later, he was welcomed at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires.
Everyone remembered how much money he has. When you control like a massive amount of money, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
This event seems, I won't say anecdotal because it struck a lot of minds, but it can be considered as a bump in the road.
But another incident loomed over him: the ongoing Yemeni civil war. Mohammed bin Salman got Saudi Arabia involved by launching a military intervention in 2015. the Houthi rebels backed by Iran, Riyadh's regional rival, resisted Saudi forces and attacked oil facilities inside the kingdom, the heart of its financial power.
MBS promised to defeat the Houthis in 2 months and failed. It turned into a quagmire, and now he's actually offering the Houthis a lot of concessions. He called them brothers. He's going to pay their salaries in retrospect with US dollars. You can't attract tourists if Houthis keep sending drones over Saudi Arabia.
To ease tensions, Riyadh met with Iran in 2023, mediated by China. Saudi Arabia and Iran then agreed to restore diplomatic relations.
And with Iran, it's a matter of dialogue and saying to the Iranians, look, you have your own issue. We want to focus on our economy. Do it. The more we quarrel, the more we have arguments and proxy wars, the more we cannot do that. So let's cut it out.
And there was another country in the region that sought closer ties with Saudi Arabia.
It's not a secret that many Israelis met many Saudis during the years. Today, we understand each other much better than we understood each other years ago. My name is Yaakov Amidror. I'm a retired general of the IDF. I was the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister between 11 and 13. I know the Saudis many, many years. They understand that to modernize Saudi Arabia, it will be much easier and much better if that will be done with cooperation with Israel.
Mohammed bin Salman was asked on US television in 2023 about normalizing relations with Israel. His answer? Every day we get closer.
I will not be surprised if historians in the future will find that this declaration was one of the reasons that Sinwar initiated the war. The fear that Israel might have an agreement with a very important country like Saudi Arabia.
It's a major blow, because it's the re-arrival of regional instability, unpredictability. It demonstrates how something that seemed dormant, like the Palestinian issue, could suddenly blow up. And that there are these problems in the Middle East that, unless they are really resolved, they don't go away.
But if you see the revival and the resurrection of the Palestinian cause, not just within the Muslim or the Arab world, but even in progressive, I think that also made a lot of Middle Eastern leaders think, oh, actually the price for normalization is higher.
قمة المتابعة العربية الإسلامية التي دعت إليها المملكة وذلك لبحث استمرار العدوان.
Arab and Muslim leaders met at a summit in the Saudi capital in 2024 in a show of unity for the Palestinian cause. Even a representative from Iran traveled to Riyadh. At the meeting, MBS condemned the Israeli army's actions and called for an immediate ceasefire.
He sees Saudi Arabia as the leader of the Arab world and himself as the leader of Saudi Arabia, and therefore he is the leader of the Arab world. He sees himself as a guy who can take Saudi Arabia into the future, post-oil, with climate change, and still be a great and dynamic country and the leader of the Arab world.
The Crown Prince's utopia is beginning to emerge in Neom, at least according to these promotional videos. The line was originally supposed to accommodate 9 million people.
Autocrats have a natural tendency to want to go and pursue like moonshots and think like it's the largest, the biggest, the first, like always this kind of grandiose, kind of vision.
But it's difficult to verify the site's actual progress.
People who come to Saudi Arabia, they're coming because they want his money. They're not coming because they want to put money there. How can he convince people to invest their money in Saudi Arabia? And they still haven't really gotten there yet.
When he announced Neom in 2017, he thought that 500 billion are going to be foreign investments. How much foreign investments did Neom attract? 0.
MBS has had to scale back his plans and timeline. The line is ultimately supposed to stretch across 170 kilometres, but according to reports, only 2.4 kilometres will be finished by 2030. Neom's projected costs have soared, with some estimates reaching up to $8.8 trillion.
He said, by 2020, maximum 2021, we're going to be able to be living completely without the need for oil. Look at us now. We are more dependent on oil than ever.
Today of the monarchy is based on oil. When you shift away from that model, which is what Mohammed bin Salman has said he wants to do and needs to do, they're going to start asking people to pay taxes, to accept less money from the government, and that's where it becomes very difficult.
When this young generation is no longer young, they've realized that some of the promises have not been met. They want to unionize and they want more rights. It will happen, it's inevitable. And my fear is it will only be met with more and more repression. And he was asked, like, what comes after Vision 2030? He said Vision 2040.